Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be recommending you books that are perfect for winter. You might be wondering, Carolyn, why are you wearing a tank top in November? That's because it is October 4th when I am filming this. I am going to be traveling in October and November, so I am pre-filming a bunch of videos, so let's just pretend that I'm wearing a really cute winter sweater, maybe even a Christmas sweater. Are you pretending? Okay, perfect. Great. Okay. I'm wearing a Christmas sweater. Amazing. Okay. So I have some Wintery books for you guys. I wanted to get books for every type of reader, so I have 20 books to tell you about. Some of them are Christmas books, some of them are not Christmas books at all, because obviously not everyone celebrates Christmas, and I wanted to just do overall Wintery books for every type of reader. So without further babbling on, now that I've explained myself, let's start talking about these books. The first one is a Christmassy book, and that is Letters from Father Christmas by J.R.R. Tolkien. I love this book so much because J.R.R. Tolkien basically wrote as Father Christmas and exchanged letters between him and his kids. It is just such a beautiful book and a sweet collection of their letters between J.R.R. Tolkien acting as Father Christmas, writing letters to his kids. It is just the sweetest thing ever. He also did little illustrations for them, as you can see, and it's really just so wonderful to not only see him as a writer, but to see him as a father, and the sweet stories that he made up for Father Christmas at the North Pole and everything. It's just such a wonderful book, and I highly recommend checking it out. It's also in such a beautiful edition. This one anyone can read no matter your age. So we're starting off with books you can read no matter your age, and then we're going up to more adult books that I wouldn't recommend reading with children. So the next one I do think that you can read with a child, and that is Where Snow Angels Go. This is by Maggie O'Farrell. Maggie O'Farrell wrote Hamnet, and she just came out with a book called The Marriage Portrait, and she is a very well-known writer of literary fiction for adults. And this is, I believe, her first foray into middle grade or children's books, and it is this really beautiful picture book about this little girl who is sick and she has this guardian snow angel, and I don't want to say too much because I do think that it is wonderful to discover it on your own, but there's like the magic of winter. There's a lot of aspects of snow. The illustrations in here are absolutely gorgeous. Such a beautiful wintry book, and again, perfect for any age. If you want to read this with a child, you can. If you want to just read it yourself. The next one is another middle grade, but again, I think you can be any age to read it, and that is Moominland Midwinter by, I think it's Tove Johnson. I always hate mispronouncing names because it makes me feel like a fool, but anyway, Moominland, the Moomins. So this is the only Moomin book that I read because my friend Emma from her YouTube channel, Emmy, recommended this book for me, and there's a whole series of the Moomin books, but this one is specifically about midwinter, and this is just I think it's Moomin Troll wakes up during midwinter when everyone is sleeping and kind of just goes on this adventure in the winter time. Such a wonderful series, and I know so many people love it, so I just wanted to recommend it in case you hadn't read it. This next book I read every year without fail because it is just one of my favorites, and that is A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. This is probably one of my favorite Charles Dickens books ever. Even if you don't celebrate Christmas but you love Dickens, or you want to get into reading Dickens but you don't know where to start, I think A Christmas Carol is a perfect place to start, and it's just Dickens at his very best because there's so much whimsy and magic, and his writing is just so fantastic in this book. It's just everything that I love about Dickens's writing and storytelling is perfectly portrayed or just put in this book so beautifully, and I cannot recommend it enough. Even if you don't celebrate Christmas, like I said, it's just such a great book. The next book I'm going to be recommending is This Winter by Alice Oseman. This is for anyone who enjoys young adult books. I am not a huge young adult reader, but Alice Oseman is my favorite YA author, and so I am recommending This Winter, but in order to read This Winter, I recommend you to start with Solitaire because the characters that are in This Winter first appear in Solitaire. So For it to make the most sense and for you to get the most out of the story, I highly recommend reading Solitaire and then This Winter, as well as Nick and Charlie, because all of the characters in the Osmond verse kind of like interweave in all of their books. So This Winter, which is specifically set during the Christmas and New Year season and holiday. Again, you don't have to celebrate Christmas to read this book, so yeah, I thought that it was a nice one for anyone who likes YA. Or doesn't like YA, because I'm not a big YA reader, but I love Alice Oseman's books. The next one is one of my favorites, and that is Anne of Green Gables by L.M. Montgomery. So this one I don't think you have to specifically read during winter. I think it's perfect for any season, but the way that L.M. Montgomery writes about the different seasons, especially autumn and winter, is so beautiful. There is the iconic quote, I don't want to butcher it, but it's when Anne says, I'm so glad to live in a world where there are Octobers. And that's one of my favorite quotes, and it's just so wonderful the way that Anne sees the world and her connection to nature, and I think it's just beautifully portrayed in the autumn and winter season especially. Also, again, perfect for any age. This is an ageless classic. I think that Solitaire, This Winter, and Nick and Charlie, they're for a YA audience. I don't think younger children that aren't teens should read these, but I think that anyone of any age could read Anne of Green Gables. So yes, just want to say that. Now we're moving on to books that are for more of an adult audience. The Deal of a Lifetime by Fredrik Backman. So as you guys know, if you've been here for any length of time, I love Fredrik Backman's books, and this book in particular is set during Christmas Eve. And it's a novella, so I don't want to say too much about it. I might just read the blurb because I don't want to spoil anything. So it says, it is Christmas Eve and a father and son are meeting for the first time in years. The father has a story he needs to share before it's too late. And as he tells his son about a courageous little girl lying in a hospital bed a few miles away, he reveals even more about himself. His triumphs in business, his failures as a parent, his past regrets, his hopes for the future. Now, on this night before Christmas, the father has been given an unexpected chance to do something remarkable that could change the destiny of a little girl he hardly knows. But before he can make the deal of a lifetime, he must find out what his own life has actually been worth, and only his son can reveal the answer. On the back, there's also a quote, and it says, everyone is always negotiating all of the time. You're doing the deal of your life every day. This was mine. Oh, it's such a great book. I love all of Fredrik Backman's books, and I think that this one would just be perfect for the winter season because it's set on Christmas Eve. Again, you don't have to celebrate Christmas to read this one. Now I'm moving on to some classics, but again, these any age can read them, and it is a series that I believe only Barnes & Noble sells. I've only seen these at Barnes & Noble, and they are the Vintage, Timeless, and Classic Christmas. So this one is a Classic Christmas, this one is a Vintage Christmas, and this one is a Timeless Christmas. So this is just a collection of different classic stories that are Christmas and holiday related from classic authors. So we have authors like O. Henry, Ella Montgomery, L. Frank Baum, Louisa May Alcott, Christina Rossetti, Hans Christian Andersen, Harriet Beecher Stowe, Elizabeth Barrett Browning, Mark Twain, Samuel Taylor Coleridge, Anne Bronte, Alfred Lord Tennyson, William Makepeace Thackeray. So these just have a bunch of classic stories in them, and they're really just such beautiful books. I even keep them around, like just as little decorative pieces around the holidays, because I think that they are just such beautiful books that I like to display. Then I have a recommendation for myself and you, because I haven't read this book yet, but this is for anyone who loves reading plays, and we have a Shakespeare play. This is A Winter's Tale. A Winter's Tale I have not read yet, and this has the iconic stage direction, enter pursued by a bear. And I really want to know the context of that. So basically, one of the characters enters the stage or enters the scene pursued by a bear, like a literal bear. And I have seen so many memes about this, and it's literally called A Winter's Tale, so how perfect. It could not be more perfect for the winter season. So I really want to read this, and I'm recommending it to you as well. So I think maybe we should both read this. If you haven't. If you have, Let me know what you think of it. Now, these next two books are for people who love reading poetry. The first one is Emily Bronte's The Night is Darkening Round Me. This is a little black classic from Penguin, and this is number 63. I feel like the wintertime is really perfect for like gloomy poetry, and who better than Emily Bronte? This collection of her poems is incredibly heartbreaking, and she just captures melancholy like at its core, and it's so heartbreaking but also incredibly beautiful and just so moving. And I wish that Emily Bronte was able to write more, because I'm currently rereading Wuthering Heights right now and I'm loving it so much, and I just wish that we had more from her. But yes, if you haven't read her poetry, I highly recommend you do so. This is like such a nice little collection that won't take you very long to read at all. So yes, for anyone who is interested in poetry, as well as this next book, which is Robert Frost. This is the Everyman's Pocket collection, or Pocket Poets edition of Robert Frost poetry. Also on the spine, it has little snowflakes, which I just think is so perfect. So Robert Frost not only writes poetry about the winter time, which he does, he also writes about all the seasons, and he is just one of my favorite poets. He and Walt Whitman hold such a special place in my heart. I really love A Late Walk, I really love Stars, I really love Waiting. The Road Not Taken, of course, is just one of my favorites. He has a poem called The Christmas Tree, An Old Man's Winter Night, A Patch of Old Snow, another poem called Snow. Yeah, so I just think that this is perfect for the winter season. If you want to get into poetry but you feel like you don't really know where to start, or you're newer to poetry, I think Robert Frost is a very approachable poet, so highly recommend. The next one is more poetry, but this is a novel in verse. It is one of my favorite books absolutely ever. I think it's the most beautiful book ever written, and that is Yevgeny Onegin by Alexander Pushkin. It's set during different times of the year, but there's one scene in particular, or there are a few scenes in particular, that are set during the winter time, and they are just glorious. They are, you can like feel the ice on your fingertips as if it's seeping through the pages, and it's beautiful. So beautiful. I don't want to say too much about the plot because I think it's exciting to read about it and discover it on your own, but this is one of my favorite books. I think it's one of the most beautiful books ever written, and I think you should read it. Are you ready for the next book? This is really unexpected. I never talk about this book ever. I don't really like it that much. No, I'm kidding. It's Anna Karenina. It's my favorite book ever. I love Anna Karenina. This book is perfect for any season. I can't do a recommendations video. I just can't talk about books without mentioning Anna Karenina. So here it is. I picked this edition because it's red and it looks a bit Christmassy, or just more wintry. And Anna Karenina, again, like Yevgeny Onegin, is set during all parts of the year, but there are certain scenes in this book that I just adore, and they are set during the winter time. There's one scene in particular with one of our main characters, Levin, on an ice rink. He's skating, and I don't want to say too much else, but that's one of my favorite scenes ever, and I just had to mention it specifically for that scene. I love this book so much. I think you should read it. I think everyone should read it. Would not recommend children to read this book, if that wasn't already obvious. Anyway, that is Anna Karenina. I adore it. Perfect for any time of year, but that ice skating scene, I think about it and it just makes my heart flutter. So yeah. This next one is a new favorite that I very recently discovered. It is a 5-star. I love it so much. I just want to reread it, and I read it about a month ago, not even? Yep. Yeah, about a month ago. And that is Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan. Claire Keegan is an Irish author, and as you can tell from this cover, there is some snow, there is some snow-covered roofs, and it's just such a great book. Perfect for any season, but it is set during the weeks leading up to Christmas. It is set in 1985, and we are following this coal merchant named Bill Furlong, and his family, and one day he goes to deliver coal to the local convent, and he discovers something that's happening there. He doesn't really know what to do about finding this information out. He is struggling morally with what to do, and it is such an incredible book. It is very short. It won't take you long to read it all, and this is based on true events. I didn't realize that these events happened until I read this book, and it's just so incredible the way that Claire Keegan writes about Bill's like conflicted feelings about what's going on, it really shows the power that the church had over this community, and obviously in Ireland. Such a beautiful book. It's very quiet, and you can feel the snow again, kind of like Evgeny Onegin. You could feel the snow when you read, and it's just so beautiful. It's very quiet, but it's so affecting, and it's like, it's loud in its quietness, if that makes sense. It has a very big message, but it's a quiet book, so yeah, love it so much. The second to last book is one that I don't know why I always associate with autumn and winter, and that is Normal People by Sally Rooney. This is one of my favorite books. I love Sally Rooney so much, and I know so many people talk about her books and talk about Normal People, but I just wanted to highlight it in case you haven't read it yet. It really is great for this time of year. Deals with a lot of mental health, and I think this time of year is kind of perfect for like those deep feelings. Yeah, the connection between the two main characters, Connell and Marianne, is stunning. I just think it's one of my favorite character relationships in literature. It's so realistic, it's so honest and brutal and heartbreaking, but also just like heart-mending at the same time as well. Like, this breaks my heart and puts it back together all at the same time. So if you are interested in reading Sally Rooney, don't know where to start, I would recommend starting with Normal People. Again, an adult book. The last book is for any fantasy lovers. If you love reading fantasy, you probably have already read this book, but I just wanted to recommend it anyway for anyone who maybe even isn't interested in fantasy, but you want to start, because I'm not a big fantasy reader, but I love this book, and that is A Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin. Why am I recommending this book? Because there is a place in this book called Winterfell, and it is basically, the whole concept is talking about winter is coming. In the Seven Kingdoms, they have really, really long summers and then even longer winters. And so they're preparing for this really long winter. And it's just so incredible the way that George R.R. Martin writes about that concept of how like the seasons affect the kingdoms. So I just wanted to recommend this because I do think fantasy, I don't know if it's just me, but I feel like it's perfect for the winter time. And if you haven't read Game of Thrones, I think it's fantastic. It's just beautifully written. The characters, the world building, just everything about this book is just phenomenal, and I highly recommend checking it out. Definitely for an adult audience. So those are all of the books that I had to recommend you guys to read during the winter season. I hope that you enjoyed. I hope that you found something that maybe piqued your interest. I would love to know your recommendations for your favorite wintry books, whether they are Christmas related or not. Even if they're not set around Christmas, but you tend to read them during Christmas time, I would just love to know your recommendations. So yes. Thank you so much for watching and being here and always being so kind and lovely and wonderful. I am sending you my very best wishes, and as always, happy reading.